Hello, Uta here in the late afternoon, reporting on my very successful weeding. This is what I call cow parsley. It has fibrous spreading roots and it will take over if you let it, and it will choke out all of your native wildflowers. That is probably from merry old England and probably has been here since the Mayflower or something. Uh, I don't think they brought it over on purpose because for them it's a weed too. It has little white flowers, blooms only once, not particularly useful to the insects. I'm sure, noticed that there weren't any holes in the leaves. The other thing I sacrificed a little fiddlehead part of a fern. The ferns are all coming up. I have maidenhair ferns and autumn ferns. I can't remember the names of all of them. So that is exciting. I'm going to put that in a vase with some of my other special things. Oh, and right behind me, you can see I've got some orchids blooming, which I kept over the winter. I kept them alive. Okay, so this is uh, a Hagen lexicon lesson. This is the three P's of trans widowhood, as I am discussing with just two more trans widows, two new ones in the sisterhood. Two more trans widows told me some more details that are very common. So I'm calling these particularly common characteristics of our coercive and deceitful husbands the three P's. The first P is profligate spending. Now, Nettie bounced a tuition check of our child's pre-K program in 1992 when I just discovered all of his three cross-dressing diaries and figured out that his so-called business trips were probably actually pretend vacations that he was taking and spending, family money on clothing and hotels and makeup and all this kind of thing. Maybe even airplane tickets. I really don't know what was bona fide business trips and what was his own self-exploration. So the profligate spending is pretty much universal. There's one who cleared out their young child's college account. It just had a few $1,000s, but he cleared it out. He spent tens of thousands of dollars with no explanation. It might have to do with the next two P's. I've got funny light here, but I'm going to proceed. Pornography. So there's all kind of coercive BDSM, power play kind of pornography, which I think is going back into some deep, deep childhood abuse or sexual abuse issues. And it's probably the unconscious trying to work out things that would really not be proper to be happening in someone's childhood. And of course, it would take a very skilled, psychiatrist or analyst to face all of this, because it's very hard to face. Often it's the parents who didn't protect him from something in childhood. So that's the second P is pornography. The third P is prostitutes. And in one case recently that I heard, he admitted that he was spending a lot of money to the tune of $300 a pop on prostitutes. Yeah. And I really don't know if Nettie was engaging in that kind of thing. It's entirely possible that they might have tried to put that under some so-called sex therapy or something like that. And the reason I suspect that, even with Nettie, was the way in which Ruth the charlatan, that therapist that I went to for one 50-minute hour, the way she suggested that I need to take on that kind of role, um, which where I would be, I guess, the dominatrix or something. I was supposed to sort of take my own little private course in this and watch some pornography and then be taking on that role with Nettie. And I just said no. And she called me spunky and traditional. I'll take it. I'll take it. Now, so that's the 3 Ps of the life of a trans widow: profligate spending of your husband, his pornography habits, and his visits to prostitutes. They might not all be happening, but according to my research now, we're getting to about 24 of us. So, and 2 or 3 are contacting me a week. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So if you know someone who's suddenly going through this, they can contact me through the contact form at Utaheggen, grasswidow.wordpress.com. It's always in the notes. Oh, by the way, on my last video, I was saying trans widows should write to Women's Declaration International at Post Office Box 21160, Washington, D.C. 2009 is the zip code. And I just want us to lobby for ourselves with this women's rights organization to bring up the pressure on trans widows as well as the children of, because we have a lot of attention on detransitioners, and I do feel that trans widows as adults have this exposure to these patterns of behavior of our trans-identified, or also known as cross-sex identifying or cross-sex ideating husbands. We have this adult experience of it, and therefore we can describe it in detail and just as accurately and dispassionately as possible. This is actually in the interest of them, because they are the ones who are not being well served by the psychologists, the psychiatrists, and the therapists, because they are not going to have worked out their childhood experiences causing them all of this distress. And that will still stay with them no matter how much hormones they take or how many surgeries they have to change the appearance of their genitals. And of course, you can go to my other video about the difference between the nerve endings and the numbers of nerve endings in female genitalia as opposed to male genitalia, and why cutting through all that tissue with the nerves is never going to result in the physical experience of the opposite sex. And in fact, there's all sorts of scar tissue experiences and scar neuroma, scar pain. And I know that this can happen as you age. For example, the scars can get worse because you kind of age and dry out a little bit. And I know this because I had a bone tumor removed from right up here at the top of my head in 2009. It was a benign osteoma, and I have osteoapatite up here because they had to take so much of my skull off. It was extracranial, so it was not brain surgery, but it was done by a brain surgeon, and big success, as you can tell. But I have cranial scar neuroma, and I have to be careful to get my neck relaxed after doing outside work. And I was really frightened when it came up about 3 years ago, but I actually had to go to the emergency room. But they all did all the EKGs and did a CAT scan and all this stuff. And what I was told and advised by the doctors and the nurses was that I have what's called cranial scar neuroma. And so anyone having a big surgery, removing parts of your body, is just going to have scar neuroma. Scar tissue ages and dries out, and it's not possible to avoid that. So that's something that the young people, or even the middle-aged men who are doing this, are not being advised that in the long term, you're always constantly going to be reminded by your physical sensations, which are not the physical sensations of the opposite sex. You are going to be reminded that you had the surgeries, those parts of your body are not there. You may have that sense of phantom body part there. This is a known phenomenon, and it is not right if this is not being told. Now, I advise you actually, if you are a person who calls yourself transgender, or if you call yourself post-op, or if you ideate as an opposite sex persona, I advise you that you probably should go to the detransitioner self-help groups, as opposed to coming here and trying to make observations with trans widows, because we don't want to hear apologies from you, and you can't apologize for what we've gone through, and you can't rationalize the 3Ps and these other things. So just quickly, I'm just going to respond to one comment that I removed regarding how feminists are responsible for this. I'm having to move this because of the light. Now, I don't think feminism is at all responsible for the rise in what is known as gender dysphoria, or what I call cross-sex ideation. You can always go to John Uhler channel, JONUHLER. He is explaining the influence of promiscuity and all these different kinds of pornography and the online connections. One thing that I can tell you, that another commonality that we see often is that many of the men who ideate a cross-sex identity, a cross-sex persona, are working in tech. And there are affinity groups in all of the tech companies for men who cross-dress, and maybe they give each other the details about the pornography and so on. The pornography piece is also demonstrated by this individual, Chris Tyson, who talks about Lolly, which is a reference to Lolita, the Nabokov novel, which is about the protagonist's fantasies of his teenage stepdaughter, which would be, of course, statutory rape. But anyway, feminists are not responsible for this phenomenon. I think that there are many other influences. Some women who call themselves feminists are supporters. They are what we would call trans allies, but I don't call them feminists. Now, oh yes, this words equals violence thing is very interesting to me, because once in a while I will get a troll on here saying to me that my truthiness is very upsetting, and if I've had such a lousy life and I have to keep on talking about it like this, then I need to go do some harm to my body, such as by finding a tall building and jumping off, or such as by going and lying down in rush hour traffic. One of them who said the last one, is a known troll. I'm not going to say his name. He does identify as a female and has had, according to his reports, a very traumatic childhood full of abuse. So, stop yourself from that kind of abuse. Um, that is demonstrating what you are accusing others of. And let's see. Oh, yes. Now, if you come over here and really want to work out your issues, um, and make some kind of apologies for what individuals do to their wives when they have gone down what I call the glitter rabbit hole, um, I think you're wasting your time. And maybe you're over here to keep watch on us, which is a stalking thing that the husbands often do um, online. But, you know, no one can apologize or make right the events that happened, which have generally, in general, caused us to get post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a very distressing thing to find out that your husband has been trying on your clothes. It is a very distressing thing to find out that your husband has been spending exorbitant amounts of money and watching insulting, um, kind of dangerous, violent pornography, and thinking of himself as a woman who is objectified and humiliated. That is um, not something that we accept as part of our lives, period. That's not what being a woman is. We do not accept humiliation. So I generally don't allow my community to get involved in debates in the comments. If there are comments that I believe have been posted as some kind of lure into a debate, I just remove it, because I am here to help my sisterhood of trans widows and to tell you a little bit about this nature. Oh, this poor little violet. It already is wilted. Back outside. Lots of weeds are calling me.